The Colorado River is the backbone of Yuma. The river brings life to this desert area. In May 2005, the body of Amancio was found floating near Yuma. I never realized what effect his death would have on my life these past 3 years. This purple building is one of the shops I used to work at and manage. I had a gourmet coffee and kitchenware store. It was a lot of fun. Enjoyed it. An awful lot of people start complaining right away that there's nothing to do here in Yuma, but I find a lot to do here in Yuma. There's a world of activities from cultural events to going out into the desert to explore mines and rock hunting and caves. Coming up on the left here is the San Carlos Hotel. It was the premier hotel for the desert Southwest. It was really a fantastic place. This is where all of the stars that didn't want to be in Palm Springs came. It was a nice getaway because they couldn't be found here.
You guys want to watch this one?
No, I mean there is, but that's mañoso.
It's like liking pizza and liking beans. I mean.
Oh, God. Yes, unfortunately, I am from Yuma. I honestly do not like that town, and I met Amancio at my first job. Amancio wanted to take me out with them, so eventually I started going out with them and going out with them more and more and more, and ever since then we never left each other's side. I did some of the biggest things just to make sure he's all right. Like, I would go to the extreme, but I was always taking care of him because I know he couldn't defend himself.
And with Amancio, like, I think he knew who he was early on because we went to junior high school together. And at that time, I kind of knew, but I was like fighting it. And so I would hang out with all the popular kids. Well, they would all pick on him. And that was something I felt really bad for, but I went along with it. It wasn't until after high school that me and Amancio actually became friends and got to know each other. To this day, I still regret not making friends with him earlier on. And I value every moment that we did spend together as friends. Because we went from, I guess, for lack of a better word, enemies, to acquaintances, to friends, to best friends, to brothers. Like, he's my brother, and it's not the same without him.
Probably one of the most important events in my life was the brain surgery, and because it created a life-altering event. I have a picture, an X-ray of him. You want to see that? If you look real close, you can see those staples. A blood vessel burst in my brain, loosely referred to as an aneurysm. This event was the prime catalyst to everything that I've done ever since this event. Completely changed my outlook on life. They were dead certain this was not, I was dead meat. And then they said, and if he does get off of that table, he's going to be a vegetable. He will never walk again and he'll never talk. I mean, sorry. I probably heard that and say, bullshit, that's going to happen. I'm going to walk and I'm going to talk again. And I really haven't shut up since, quite frankly.
Hacía travesuras, no hacía problemas, ¿no? Todo era risa, era jugar y nada más. No, no era niño travieso, no fue muy travieso. Somos de una familia machista, mi esposo. Y a mí no me importara que fuera gay. Todos me decían que trataba de sobreprotegerlo, pero yo lo sobreprotegía porque yo sabía de la manera que era, que le den su amor, su cariño, todo lo que uno de padre le da a todos sus hijos, pero ellos son especiales, pero a veces no entienden las demás personas.
A young man was found murdered in the Colorado River Friday. Amancio Corrales, 23, was found dead at 7 a.m. in the river about 500 yards west of Paradise Cove. Sheriff's Captain E. Bratcher said the agency had to be vague because the investigation was ongoing. He did not have any further information about Corrales.
I had gotten a phone call and was told about it. And so immediately I turned on the news. And then I was watching the internet. Then it came out in the paper the next day. It wasn't, at that moment, wasn't important. I mean, it was important, but I was not involved in it. And so it was just something from the outside I was looking at.
We had a homicide. It was not an easy case to investigate. There were no witnesses at the scene. Obviously, the victim's not able to tell us what happened. We knew that he'd been out in the bars. We knew that he had left one of the local bars with a person. We did not know the person's name. That was the best lead that we had at the time.
It only took about a month to just dwindle away. And the police weren't doing, or the sheriff wasn't doing anything. We perceived anyway. I started getting that urge that I get when I see something is wrong. Then I start thinking, no, we've got to do something about this. We got to find out more about it. And it wasn't about doing a project at that time or developing anything. It was just, we've got to find out more of the facts. I decided I'm just going to put a posting on the internet to a couple of groups and say, be at this particular church at this particular time, and we're going to discuss the situation. I hadn't met the Corrales family, but they showed up. I went up to my podium and said, this is what it is. What are we going to do about it? And that was it. And then from that point, you just start filtering and you say, well, okay, we need to do this, or we need to do this, and we need to do this. And we started finding out more and more, and that's how the project was born. And one of my first powerful contacts also came, and that was Mr. Sam Holdren.
It's a rural community in Arizona. And rural communities here are very unique because they don't ever talk about gay and lesbian issues. They never address them. And this case, the Amancio case in particular, sort of was splashed on the front pages and in people's living rooms through the local news. And now they were forced to have a dialogue and a discussion about the gay and lesbian community and about the discrimination and violence that we face.
That one was a violent crime. It just looked pretty bad. To me, it did. There was signs of a struggle out there. He had been stabbed multiple times. You know, when the body was located, we had winds of over 40 miles an hour that morning, and we had to work quickly to photograph, identify, and get those things collected as evidence. We went by later on, after the crime scene was terminated. Later on in the evening hours, we seen a group of people that were wearing black shirts.
And the police hadn't, like...
No, it wasn't
plate,
sectioned off at all.
It wasn't taped? Or...
It wasn't taped off. It didn't say do not enter or anything. I just remember seeing claw marks everywhere, blood on the trees, on the leaves, on the dirt, everywhere.
It was gruesome. I mean, to see that this is where your friend spent his last moments.
You could see the blood scattered on the rocks where you could see he tried to run. It's just, it looks like nothing was done. Like, they didn't care. I honestly don't think they did their job.
Okay, off to the right, see, Yuma County Sheriff. That's where I used to go in and get updates on the case. And it wasn't too long into the case that they threw me out physically. And it really upset Mrs. Corrales. That's when she first got the inkling that the sheriff wasn't doing what they needed to be doing.
No creo como se vio todo al principio que yo quería estar push con los detectives y todo eso y nada, ya había hasta decidido decirle a Michael que no, porque los mismos sheriffs me decían que Michael no y
we found out later that what they would do, they assigned it to one officer, and about every 3 months, he would open the file, see if there could be any, close it back up, and put it in his little shelf. But when we found out it was a cold case, then I really got upset and started working hard about finding who the murderer was. Because I wanted to believe that our legal system was working, as flawed as it might have been. There's a couple of things on me that are staying with me. The pin that I'm wearing, the little crystal angel, were given to me by Mrs. Corrales, elder, the grandmother. And I told her then at that vigil that I would never take it off until we find the murderer. And I carry this as memory right here. This is Amancio dressed, and that's Amancio.
Oh, on the keychain?
On the keychain, yeah. This is the cemetery where he's buried. They had a very, very beautiful headstone made. I was stunned when I saw this. I thought it was so appropriate that the family would do this much stuff and not just have a picture of him, but had both.
That's amazing.
See, that's him in drag. And you see it's on the left-hand side, the more prominent. I'm someone who was concerned, that just said, enough is enough. You can't treat us this way. You can't treat this society this way. And you can't treat our people this way. And you can't treat someone who's murdered this way. Period. You can't do it. And now you're seeing what really got me motivated about the whole thing, because I really got pissed off. Part of the tragedy of it is he'd just been back in Yuma a few days. He came back to be with his family and live a different, happy life. But the very first weekend he's here, he's killed. A loss. And I've never met him. I never had the pleasure.
We were in Phoenix, and my mom says, why don't you guys just come over here? Because it was much safer over here. And my dad as well thought so, the same. There's pictures of him dressed up like a girl. Most of these pictures are from shows that he would do. There's a collage over here that he did of the family and friends, and trophies and his makeup. In those closets are all his clothes. This is all his boy clothes, which still smell like him up there. These are all his girl clothes and more shoes. His hats, and these are shirts that Amancio, well, most of this stuff Amancio made. Like, for example, this dress. Yeah, it's the funniest thing. He went to Susie's Deals, $5 store. He got a muscle shirt.
It's basically, it's a muscle tee?
Yeah, it's a muscle shirt. It's a muscle shirt with diamond, little sparkly thingies, and this cloth, he just found it somewhere. The last show he did in Phoenix was with this outfit. You can still see all the makeup on him. I don't like to think of him as dead, even though I should. Mom, this picture, move it. He's not coming back. Well, that's my way of, it makes her feel comfortable, but that's another reason why I left this house. Because I hate coming in here. I don't like it. I miss my brother too, but I hate coming in here and seeing all this stuff because I want to be here. And if it's the stuff is here, it's like, where is he? So I just wanted to take that stuff out because I know he's gone and I know he's not going to come back. So I just hope she takes him out one day.
I was actually a junior when he was a senior, and I met him because of dance class. When I met Amancio, he really wanted to do it as a girl, and he amazed me a lot because he will put a lot of effort into it, and that's one of the things that I always liked about him.
Do you call this like drag, or what do you call it, like female impersonation?
Female impersonation. That's what it is. I mean, that's what we do, We try to look like the artist as much as we can, either with clothes, movements, makeup, hair. We do like tricks on our face so our face can look thinner.
Is it a regular, like a women's, or is it like stage makeup? Or?
It's more like a stage makeup, and it's really really thick, and I mean, so you can't see my beard. It's really thick, and I have a lot. So, I mean, it's one of the only things that you can actually, cover all yourself up, and I mean, you can tell, and at the end you will see the difference.
One day we all had the courage to dress up just out of nowhere. And we didn't know about makeup that well.
Amancio, when he first started dressing up, looked like a boy in drag. I mean, it was like, you could tell it was a guy.
But we thought we looked hot and we didn't care. We still got hit on.
He got really, really good. I believe going to beauty school, it really helped him out. But he got really good. Even I was stunned a couple times. I was like, wow. But at the end of the night, he started growing. You can see the beard. Yeah, at 2 o'clock in the morning. What he told me is that he really just liked dressing up as a girl. He liked being a guy. He just liked dressing up as a girl, as a woman, I should say.
His drag was more of a fun time, go out to entertain. Were you there that night that he did Laura Leon and his falsie fell out? Or was it just me and him?
I don't remember, but his tits fell out quite a few times.
I went to this club for the first time in my life, and what got my attention was the main thing there was him. Amancio did my makeup for the first time, and we were taking videos, and we were just, like he was showing me how to move and how to act. He was very feminine and very classy. He wasn't a drag queen, like a ghetto drag queen that is lifting up her skirt and getting on the pole and just being ghetto. No, he was a classy girl. He was classy and he was nice.
Yuma was too small for him. Too small. Like, he had a talent and he had to go other places to show it because Yuma, there wasn't nothing in Yuma. There still isn't nothing in Yuma. He was more well known in Mexicali, like extremely. But because, they were right by the border, people would comment, word would get around because he was like the queen of that place. He wanted to be a showgirl. He wanted to work and all that stuff. All of our plan was to leave to Las Vegas. And unfortunately, it didn't happen.
I knew from past experiences that it had to be kept in the media. It had to be, you have to push it.
So there was this vigil that was put together, and the family came out and the community came out, and together people mourned, and they also were able to put a call out for justice.
We're in Yuma, Arizona at the Riverfront Park. This is a location of the first vigil that was held after the murder. They ran a video of Amancio's life, and we set it up here, and it ended with a candlelight vigil. And it was really an exciting event, and the Corrales family themselves, they brought all kinds of soda and water, and it was really very festive. Although it was a somber occasion, it was still quite festive.
That movement built on itself, and they brought it here to Phoenix, and we helped organize a vigil at the Capitol. The governor's office was actually represented. A speaker from the governor's office was there. The governor knew all about the situation. We had a huge turnout at the state capitol, which is unheard of in this state. People just don't come out on Sunday for things. And it's because it resonated with people. You know, this was this young life that was just taken away for no reason other than the fact that he was just being himself.
There's an opposition that, says that was a good thing, the guy should have been killed. There's a group of people in this town who are very happy that he's dead. They sent me a piece of hate mail, a letter, and it was typewriter typed, no return address. Even it was obvious that they didn't want to know that it was them. In that I went to the sheriff's office in town, they refused to accept it, and they said take it out to the Foothills branch. So I took it out to the Foothills branch. They were not going to accept it, and I said, but this is evidence in a case that you have to. I'm presenting something. You have to file a complaint here. And then he got real indignant and said, no, I don't. The sheriff's office has been rather rough with us all the way along the line.
Right now, Arizona law includes sexual orientation in its hate crimes laws, but a crime has to occur first, and then they can prosecute it as such and get an enhanced sentencing. Local authorities, though, have to believe that it's a hate crime. They have to understand what a hate crime is. They have to have the education, and oftentimes they don't have the resources to investigate because they never have to deal with it, or they don't think they have to deal with it.
Is there any sort of gay community here in Yuma?
I'm certain that there is. I don't think that it's as large or as vocal as some of the other ones that you're going to see in bigger towns. The victim's sexual preference or ethnicity makes absolutely no difference to us. What absolutely surprised me was no one that was with him could say he left with so-and-so. You would think that if your friend leaves, you might know who they're leaving with, since they aren't leaving with you.
The nights that he wouldn't perform, we would just go out to the clubs and dance and have a good time. There was a new bar here in town. I don't know if it was new, but it was new to us. And it's Ron's place. It was Maria, it was me, it was my ex-boyfriend, and Patricia, another of my girlfriends. So I saw Amancio by the bar with a beer. I was like, Amancio, we need to go. Like, it's over. We need to get out of here. He's like, I don't want to leave. I want to find somebody. He didn't want to go home alone. And then Amancio, all of a sudden we see Amancio come in with the guy. And he was right in front of the car. The lights were on. We were seeing the whole scene. We were watching everything. Amancio was like this in the fence. And the guy was with his arm this too. And they were just talking and flirting with each other. And I could tell that the guy wanted to hook up with him. And he looked at us and he's like, go, I'm gonna go with this guy. To me, again, that was completely normal. We did it so many times. And I never heard a story like this before. So, okay, go ahead. But Patricia was all, no. Why are we gonna let him go with the guy? What if something happens? We're like, oh, don't worry about it. He does it all the time. And then I woke up the next day like at 11. I looked outside and there was Amancio's car. And I had a feeling right away. I was like, this is not normal. This is not normal. This is not what he does. So all of a sudden I get a call on my cell phone and it was the police and they're like, stop driving, wherever you are, and tell me where you are.
So the police thought you were a suspect?
Yes, I was the first one. They told me straight up in my face, you are the first suspect.
Me preocupaba mucho cuando salía. Nosotros, tanto su papá como yo, todo el tiempo, cuando salía de aquí de la casa, yo ya sentía algo. Cuando él estaba aquí en la casa, yo sentía bien despreocupada, yo me sentía bien. Por eso cuando él no estaba aquí, o salía a su show a Mexicali, a Tijuana, donde fuera, yo estaba todo el tiempo con el Jesús en la boca.
I received a call from Jesse and I couldn't make out a word he was saying. He was just like crying hysterically, like screaming at the top of his lungs.
Pues primero cuando vinieron y preguntaron por Amancio, yo le dije, ¿qué pasó? ¿Chocó? ¿Tuvo un accidente? ¿O lo arrestaron? O algo, pero todo podía creer menos que me fueran a decir que estaba muerto.
I couldn't believe it, you know, because a day before I was calling him, you know, I don't know if I had the feeling, but it was, how can I explain it?
I didn't know what to do. I had lost the person that I had fallen in love with, one of my first gay friends, one of the people that I truly loved to death. You know, I'm speechless. I can't even speak of it, of how bad I felt.
I didn't know how to take it. So I got to the store and that's when I broke down.
The sheriff at every turn wanted to stop me, personally, wanted to stop the project, didn't want me to have any contact with it, ordered the parents not to talk to me. I tried to get the city involved. The city wouldn't have anything to do with it. The county wouldn't have anything to do with it. In fact, they even sent out a letter, a memo to all the supervisors and the councilmen. Do not get involved with this case, in bold, capital letters. They wanted to hush it up. They wanted it very quiet. From there, and then I contacted all of my legislatures.
You know, I know Michael for many, many years. When everybody wanted it to turn away from this crime that was committed, he kept everybody reminding them this is a human being. We're not just talking about one statistics in Yuma County. I think that in a community like this, when everybody feels that we have almost like a perfect society with everybody, you know, it's a small community, people going to the parents involved in schools, involved in all kinds of activities, our military, we're very proud of them, and then we see something like this happening. This issue is so important that we cannot forget, we cannot just look away and say, well, it's another number in our sheriff's office or in the crime unit. We're talking about a human being that was subjected to the hate crime.
Amanda Gary, she came down and we set up a meeting with the Sheriff Ogden, and her and myself and Deputy Eben Bratcher. And at that meeting, we discussed the case, and it was going along really quite well for a bit. And then I asked the question about sensitivity training, how much sensitivity training they'd had, that really incensed the sheriff. He rose up out of his chair, turned a beet red, came across the table, and I moved my chair, pushed it back, because I thought he was going to grab me. And Amanda pushed her chair back. It was so startling. And he lit into me about, who are you to be accusing us of not doing our job, so forth and so on. And then he realized what he had done, and he looked down at Amanda and realized really what he had done, because Amanda held the purse strings to the sheriff's office. When we went out, Amanda and I came to right about where we're at right now, and Amanda touched my shoulder and turned around and said, "Mike, I've never seen Ogden go off like that. You really got him. Something about what you said has hit him, hit a nerve." And so I started doing some research, and none of the officers at that time had had sensitivity training, which is mandated by law.
You know where hate crimes legislation started from? It's from the Civil Rights Act, and local law enforcement often wouldn't prosecute, and local juries wouldn't convict because people had sympathy for the person who committed the crime, and they weren't able to overcome their own biases and prejudices when they were sitting on a jury, or the sheriffs when they were investigating these crimes. And so it took the Civil Rights Act and federal hate crimes legislation in the South to start bringing some justice to these cases of African Americans who were murdered and lynched. And it's almost like a very similar situation that exists for our community, the gay and lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community in this country. And Yuma is a perfect example of that.
Mr. Corrales is an interesting individual. When I first met him, I kind of thought, gee, I guess maybe he really doesn't care. But that quickly went away. That evaporated very quickly. It became very obvious. I think it became most apparent at the graveside, when we were at the graveside, because you could see a change in his face, a sadness come over.
Se iban a reír de él y todo eso, y a mí no me gustaría que a un hijo mío le fuera reacción de la gente o lo golpearan, pues algo así, porque para muchas personas son significantes, son unos seres que no son aceptables en la sociedad ahorita. Y era el comentario que teníamos yo todo el tiempo, de que se cuidara y que todo el tiempo, pues que saliera adelante lo mejor, que era lo que le deseaba yo todo el tiempo. Yeah.
My brother, when he passed away, May 6th, so on Mother's Day, which was the 11th, that was the day of the funeral. He had a friend that I guess she spoke with the angels. So pretty much a spirit went to look for her. And that he told her to please tell my mom to look for a pink rose in his stuff, that was his Mother's Day present. So after the funeral and after everybody left, she went through his stuff and she found it, and it was in a box and it said Happy Mother's Day and everything. She couldn't stop crying. But that's the story of that flower.
Y esto me lo regaló él, ya después de muerta.
She did continue to come in, and we met with her repeatedly throughout the 2 years. A lot of times to the victims, there is no other case. That's the focus of their life at that point, and they've lost a loved one to a homicide. She did continue to come in, and we met with her repeatedly throughout the 2 years. The unfortunate reality is new information doesn't come in every day. I can understand the frustration on her part and wondering why nothing was being done. But that's the truth of it is behind the scenes, everything that we could be doing was being done. And there's just sometimes not new information to share.
Shortly after the second anniversary celebration at the cemetery, off to the side on the driveway, and a little hand came out and pointed at me and summoned me over there. And the person told me that they knew something about this case, and they wanted to talk about it. They admitted that they'd known about it for the 2 years since the murder, and it had just been weighing on their conscience, eating and eating and eating at them. And they also realized that it wasn't going to go away. We were going to keep on this, and the more we kept it in the press, then the more they felt bad. I went over to a coffee house and we sat, and they told me the story. I encouraged them that we would go together to the sheriff's office. And they really almost went white. And they said, I don't want to go to the police, because if they find out who I am, I'm dead. Yeah, after I knew this, I shook that night. I shook, and I'm still scared. I'm more scared for the person. And that's why I've gone to such lengths to never genderize or say anything about this person in any way other than what transpired. I won't let anybody know what that is, and that I'm going to carry that to my grave. They said, well, we could do this probably anonymously, and you could send letters. You could send a letter to the sheriff's department, and you could send a letter to the Corraleses, and that would make the sheriff's department listen. But you would have to put details in that letter, lots of details. That letter was written, and then it was sent to the sheriff's office, and nobody outside of myself and the person who issued the information knows about this. The sheriff's department doesn't know that that I pushed this along or gave that person a little more courage to go ahead and do it and set up the mechanism on how to do it.
It took almost 2 years for someone to get the courage to come forward and even anonymously give the tip that led to the arrest in this case. Mr. Solario was arrested and booked into our jail on charges of second-degree murder.
From everything that I have read and everything that I've talked to, from people I've talked to, it appears that it went something like this, but we'll never know unless Ruben Solario Valenzuela comes forward and says so. Amancio met Ruben outside the bar at Ron's place. They had a brief discussion. Amancio went over to his friend and said, I'm going to go off with him. And they climbed into another fellow's Jeep. They drove to Ruben's home, which would have been about an 8-minute drive at best. And then they got into Ruben's truck and went out to Paradise Cove, which is about another 10 to 12-minute drive. Speculation is that they started to have a physical romantic interlude of some kind. Amancio's top was off, his bra was exposed, and his pants were unzipped. Not down, just unzipped. What I've been able to decipher, 3 different assaults took place. One was a physical battering with fists, and then Ruben at some point got a blunt instrument of some kind. And then, if that wasn't enough, at some point Ruben took out a knife. All this time, evidence does show that Amancio was trying to get away, and he slashed him multiple times. And the fatal blow was to the center of his chest into his heart. Once Amancio was dead, Ruben drug him to this little culvert and threw him over the edge into the water. So he had presence of mind and left. Made some frantic phone calls to, of all people, his girlfriend, who he later married. Finally then catched his mother, who lives in San Diego, and talked to her, and then called his aunt, and his aunt and uncle gave him some money, $100, to leave and flee. He fled to Mexicali first and then down to Guadalajara and came back to Yuma 3 months later. I've come down to the conclusion that there's probably about 17 people who have direct knowledge that he did that night. We're here at Paradise Cove, the murder scene of Amancio Corrales. And then as we started seeing each in piece, and all this stuff, as we gathered it together, it got deeper and deeper. And then when we walked over to the other little area where he was tossed into the water, it's where I really started getting it. And I'm almost going to cry now, too. In fact, my voice is cracking because it just is such an emotional statement, an emotional feeling that transcends the intellectual side of doing the project and doing all of this. This brings it home. This brings it to life or death. And it's sad. It's deeply sad that this young, excitingly vibrant life, a man I never met, but through all of this discovered that this young, beautiful child was cut down so soon in his life that it's devastating, and it shouldn't happen. And that's it. This is where Ruben was arrested, right outside. As he wasn't inside, he was just right outside here, almost to the curb, is where he was arrested. The strange thing is that just on the other side of the KFC here is Econo Lube and Tune. The police went there, the sheriff's department went there first. They thought that's where he was, and they were looking for him there, and he almost got away. If he'd gotten to his car, and he would have driven away by the time that they realized their mistake. At the risk of sounding sappy, if I've accomplished nothing else in my life, I have accomplished one really terrific thing. A killer is in jail. A killer of human beings is in jail. It took a while, but he's there. I have only one major goal right now, is to make sure I get to that trial and be able to see this culprit convicted. It's not enough that he's in jail. He needs to be convicted.
Having covered the court beat here for a number of years and speaking with numerous prosecutors and attorneys over the years, I'm going to quote what they tell me. It's next to impossible to figure out what a jury is going to do. You never know. You never know. The defendant in this case is definitely well represented. Michael Donovan is a top-notch defense attorney with a pretty good record as far as wins and losses. This is the kind of case that you would definitely need someone with his abilities on your side for. So as far as having the type of attorney that's needed for this, he's got a good one. Initially, when charges were filed against the person that was arrested, Ruben Solorio, the prosecutors filed second-degree murder charges. The case was eventually sent back. It was later sent back to the grand jury, and they returned what's called a no bill with different charges, abandoning a body and manslaughter, I believe.
I think the prosecutors were initially charging Ruben Solorio with second-degree murder because the crime was so brutal. And the grand jury came back with a reduction in the charges to manslaughter, which I guess which makes no sense to me, because manslaughter basically it's not murder. It's sort of excused what they did. And that's what the grand jury was saying. That, okay, this guy, no, he didn't actually go out there and kill this person. It was an accident. That wasn't the case, and that's very clear from the autopsy report.
Whenever there's a story about Amancio, I always, since I don't live in Yuma, I'll read it on the internet. And there's always these hateful remarks of people just saying he got what he deserved. Oh, they're punishing the guy way too much. That's too much. He did us a favor.
All my relatives, I had the conversation with them, and several of them said, you know, they really couldn't blame Ruben. I mean, you know, they almost blamed Amancio, saying, you know, you're asking for it when you do that. And I challenged them on that, saying, but that doesn't give anybody a reason to assault somebody or hurt somebody or kill somebody. And they rethink that process. But you could see how, you know, when local people and communities where this conversation never happens, that includes elected officials and law enforcement officials, when they're looking at these cases, you could see how they might have a lack of understanding and are unable to effectively prosecute and investigate these crimes because they just don't understand. they sympathize with the murderer, and that's almost, I have no idea what they said in the grand jury room, but in my mind, that's what it seems like, that they just sympathized with Ruben and said, okay, well, there is a dead body here, so we have to do something. But if I were that person, I would have done the same thing.
He knew he was a guy. He knew it. There's no way. And I know he knew because me and Amancio would tell him before we would go with them.
There's a huge, lack of a better word, clientele that prefer a man dressed as a woman. And so he preferred that type of guy. Amancio always liked to have fun, but he always felt that everyone knew he was a guy.
We wouldn't try to make him believe anything. I mean, why? You know? Why would you want to make him believe that you're a girl? I mean, when you get there, it's going to be obvious that you're not. So, Amancio wasn't trying to make him believe he was a girl.
And if in all honesty, if he did fool someone, what happened to him does not justify that. I'm sorry. You had every right, if that guy found out he was a man, didn't want to do that, kick him out of the car or whatever. But there was nothing Amancio could have done to deserve what he got. And that man is scum of the earth. To take someone's life over something so petty and piddly, it's sickening.
He's incarcerated over there. He's in one of these wings, that one, or that one. We don't know which one.
This guy could walk. Still, he could be found innocent. We live in a very conservative town. And out of 12 people, it only takes one to say, not guilty. Whether they know whether he's guilty or not, they could easily say, because you know, people are people. Whether they'll do the right thing is another thing.
Do you worry about the outcome of the trial?
Well, I try not to think about it sometimes because it's gonna be hard, you know, because what if they give him a small amount of years, or what if they find him not guilty, or I think about everything, you know. And, you know, if they let him go, I think about that the most because we're not gonna be safe, you know. And that's one of my biggest fears, you know. He's just a bad person with all his criminal background, and with this, and they let him free, it's gonna trigger him to hurt one of us or something. I think that's my fear here, that he might come after me or my son or my family or whatever.
That particular year, there were 14 murders. only 3 of them, one has been solved, and one is in court, and one they're searching for. They realize who it is. That's not very good. That means 11 out there that nothing's been done for. The same month that Amancio was murdered, a family of 6 was murdered. But there again, no one has stepped up to build a project or keep the light shown on that murder. So it's gotten 0 press. 0 press. When we should have had anniversaries and vigils and stuff for that one too.
No, para nosotros es un placer que Michael todo el tiempo nos ha apoyado y ha estado con nosotros en las buenas y en las malas. Y para nosotros es un orgullo tener una persona que nos dé la mano y que nos apoye. Para mí es un placer tener una persona así que nos apoye. Gracias.
Que se arregle esto. Me da mucho gusto que no hayan cambiado fechas. Me siento que tenemos ya que salir de esto porque es muy estresante, es una cosa muy difícil, pero pues que se haga justicia y para eso estamos. Para que hagan lo que tiene que hacer la justicia. Hasta la ley de Dios, pero aquí la tierra también tiene que pagar por lo que hizo.
When the plea bargain came down, the comments in the paper, there were a few, but the balance of the scales of justice have shifted in the public's mind, that they find that this is a reprehensible crime, that no, he shouldn't be killed just because he's a female impersonator, he's gay, or he went out as dressed as a female. It doesn't make any difference. Murder is murder, and you just don't kill people. And it's an interesting societal shift. So that is a really exciting news, actually, in my mind. I love that there is some hope here for Yuma.
It has a lot of people outraged because the plea agreement, if the judge does accept it, and that's the thing, we haven't heard back that the judge has accepted it. Another judge oversaw the process, but he can't make the determination. There's nothing that could be given to Ruben that will make the family and friends feel better. There's no punishment that would fit that crime. There's no way we'll get him back. And it's just sickening that he might... The time served is very minimal. It's just frustrating to hear that he might get off so easily.
He gets to go and have Christmas dinner, and he'll go and have Thanksgiving and other celebrations, and the Amancio family, they have a grave to go to. I can't see the justice in this one.
There's like Christina, Brittany, Kylie Minogue, Marilyn Monroe. He did Cher. He looked just like Cher.
He looked exactly like her.
He would find the weirdest things at Goodwill and turn them into the perfect costumes.
We're in front of the Yuma County Justice Center, and this is where Ruben Solario Venezuela will be sentenced.
Really wouldn't have anything bad to say about someone. Like, he would spin it in a positive way.
Pues venimos a ver qué va a pasar en la corte. Esperamos que el juez tome conciencia de lo que se va a acusar a esta persona y le dé lo que se merece. Eso esperamos.
It's been years since I've seen them.
So much for me that I've forgotten so many things that I'm remembering right now.
Vamos a entrar a corte a ver qué respuesta nos da el juez tocante lo del Junior. Esperamos que nos dé buena respuesta y que le den los años que merece. Y a ver qué pasa. Salir adelante. Gracias.
famous. He's getting there. I mean, unfortunately, you know what I mean? He's gonna be known by a lot of people.
There was a project developed in Amancio's name. Community organizers held candlelight vigils, hoping that someone would come forward with additional information. Mr. Bachman, who is not a victim in this case, was involved in that project.
He did that for fun. He didn't do it because it was like, he had to. It was like, he liked it and he wanted to do it.
We have a system of laws and things have to be proved. And I must accept the state's representation and the record I have in front of me that this is not a hate crime.
In this case, the grand jury decided that the appropriate charge was manslaughter. The provocation section of the law talks about whether the victim's conduct could be sufficient to cause a loss of control. What matters is that the grand jury, looking at that, believed that that was the sort of thing that Amancio should have been open about, should have disclosed, and that by not disclosing that it is possible that a reasonable person could have reacted with a loss of control.
A lot of the time, whenever there was issues, Amancio was always the one to bring everyone back together.
Mr. Valenzuela, for all the reasons I've stated on the record, I have found sufficient aggravating circumstances in this case to sentence you to a substantially aggravated prison term pursuant to ARS section 13702.01, and it's therefore ordered the defendant in this case is sentenced to the Arizona Department of Corrections for the substantially aggravated prison term of 8.75 years.
Y bien por lo que él me dijo, lo que no me gustó, la sentencia que le dieron tan poquito, pero pues así son las leyes, ¿qué le vamos a hacer? Yo lo único que quiero dejarles bien claro es que quisiera que se viera a estas gentes de otra manera, tuvieran sus derechos, tuvieran ¿cómo te podría decir? Que los aceptaran normalmente. Somos humanos, todos igual. Sentimos, lloramos, gritamos, gozamos, todo. Y esos padres y esos parientes que no aceptan a sus hijos o sus familias así, son gente que no tienen corazón, que no tienen sentimientos, ¿verdad? Y le hago un llamado a toda la gente que respeten y quieran a estas personas como cualquier ser humano. Gracias.
I would have never known Amancio. This is terrible. Had he not been murdered, I would have never met him. But I am blessed in many respects that I've had this opportunity. The Corrales family, they're absolutely magnificent. They're wonderful. They're just a beautiful, beautiful family. And this was their only son, and it really shouldn't have happened. I'm going to try to keep a relationship going, for sure, on that level, because they're just great people to be around. She cooks good, too. The very first vigil. I vowed to your grandmother that evening that I would keep this on until we... And I've never taken it off. But now that it's over, I'm going to take it off.
¿Se acuerda que le dijo a mi mamá Gloria que...
The Colorado River is the backbone of Yuma. The river brings life to this desert area. In May 2005, the the body of Amancio was found floating near Yuma. I never realized what effect his death would have on my life these past 3 years.
¿A dónde huirás cuando tu víctima va a dormir, arrullada por las lágrimas que hoy le ven partir? Entre odio y violencia una vida quedará. Si te suena diferente o el color no te es igual, y entre la diferencia que no se puede distinguir, su riesgo es constante pero sin miedo de vivir. Crece tu coraje y te dejas expandir entre aquellos ignorantes que no dejan ni vivir. Entre notas y entre líneas, tu foto me encontré, que tu sangre, Amancio, como el río se fue. Noticias esparcidas de tu muerte escuché, que tu fe y tu esperanza no te pudo proteger. No escuché la voz que la marcha reclamaba, no me paré ni yo, ni pedí la palabra. Lejano parecías que ni reparé, en mi vida no cabía ni una pregunta ni un porqué. ¿Cómo hablarás callado si no te puedo escuchar? Mientras vidas van pasando que parecen no importar. Entre burlas y moquetes, el que llora no puede hablar. ¿Harás algo por defenderle o simplemente lo verás? Y por si fuera Amancio, esta vez solo diré que duerma como quiera, si es Dalila está bien. Y quizás todos pensamos que solo hay uno que culpar, y quizás todos pensamos los que tienen que cambiar. Ya se enfrías las palabras que tu madre dedicó. Si nuestro amor te hubiera salvado, no estuvieras aquí.
Is there any sort of gay community here in Yuma?
I'm certain that there is.
Yuma was too small for him. He had a talent.
He was a classy girl, and he was nice.
What he told me is that he really just liked dressing up as a girl. He liked being a guy.
Tenía unas botitas vaqueras, chiquitas, pero le encantaba a él ponérselas porque tenían tacón.
All of our plan was to leave to Las Vegas. Unfortunately, it didn't happen.
Todo podía creer menos que me fueran a decir que estaba muerto.
He couldn't defend himself. You could see the blood scattered on the rocks where you could see he tried to run.
It was not an easy case to investigate.
And the police hadn't, like...
No, it wasn't sectioned off at all. It wasn't taped off. It didn't say do not enter or anything.
They didn't care. I honestly don't think they did their job.
There's a group of people in this town who are very happy that he's dead.
And there's always these hateful remarks of people just saying he got what he deserved.
This was this young life that was just taken away for no reason other than the fact that he was just being himself.
You can't treat us this way. You can't treat this society this way. And you can't treat our people this way. And you can't treat someone who's murdered this way.
I started working hard about finding who the murderer was. The sheriff at every turn wanted to stop me.
They threw me out physically.
They wanted to hush it up. They wanted it very quiet.
And then as we started seeing each in piece, and all this stuff as we gathered it together, it got deeper and deeper. There's probably about 17 people who have direct knowledge that he did that night. That this young, excitingly vibrant life, a man I never met, but through all of this discovered that this young, beautiful child was cut down so soon in his life that it's devastating, and it shouldn't happen.
Why don't you guys just get a little bit closer?
All right.
Ew. It was almost as though we were young and we fell in love, and then we had lots of friends that we wanted to share that with. And so we were motivated to get people to come out and volunteer, and it really did grow exponentially.
What Compass is doing is it's really creating a big tent family here where we can take care of our family. And we can replicate this model in other places, small communities nearby, so they can take care of their families.
Regardless of whether or not they ever come into the community center, they'll benefit that there's an active, vibrant community here in Palm Beach County.
I went to elementary school where my grandmother taught me first grade. My other grandmother taught me sex education in 7th grade. There's not a lot of things you can ask your grandma in sex education class, you know?
We went downstairs to let our dog out, and there was a letter saying confidential on it, and it was from the health department. And the only reason that they would actually leave a letter underneath my door saying, "We need you to come in," is if I'm HIV positive.
My name on my driver's license is still male. Needless to say, if I have to show it to anybody, it's like, It's like obviously me, but the name really doesn't fit. So I am going to get that changed as soon as I can.
When I heard those words, that was as powerful as hearing the N-word. The reverberations, the reverb, the shock, the emotion, it was probably 3 days before I recovered.
My father, he passed away when I was 11 years old, just a month before I found out about my cancer. And I unfortunately was not able to come out to him. I hope in some way that he knew. And I believe in my heart that he would have been okay with it.
Basically, when I was a little kid, my whole family was in my town. I mean, my dad's brothers and sisters. I went to elementary school where my grandmother taught me first grade. So it was a very tight-knit environment where everybody was related to me. I mean, I could walk in the local grocery store, hold up a piece of candy over my head and say, "Charge it to Grandma," and they knew who it was. So I think there was a little bit of needing to get away from all that identification. I was salutatorian and I had an image to portray and first grandchild, and there was a lot of responsibility with that I was afraid of breaking by coming out.
From the very beginning, even as a young man, I knew of a lot of people whose lives were ruined because they were outed one way or another. I was a graduate student in clinical psychology at the time, and I remember as we studied this card and saying, that homosexuals see this, this, and this. I didn't see it, and I knew I was gay, but I think that was the first thing that started me thinking, what am I doing? Doing graduate work, getting a degree, going into a field that considers me mentally ill.
I was a psychology major in college, and I did suicide prevention, and I answered a hotline, and our questionnaire was always to determine how serious somebody was. And I would say that I was not to the stage of calling 911, but I certainly didn't have a lot of value for my life. I felt like I had been very successful, but I didn't feel very fulfilled, and I wondered what the heck I was thinking, you know, what more is there to this? Because if this is it, I am not happy and I don't want to do this anymore.
Part of demystifying and really addressing long-standing misconceptions and stereotypes that have sometimes been state-sponsored, you know, stereotypes about gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender people, is to open up your space and say, come on in, check us out, learn that we're just here organizing and trying to make a nice place.
Certainly it's a gay lesbian community center, but it's so much more than that, and it is the kind of center that really is able to draw people from all over Palm Beach County and South Florida to be able to come together here and show what a special place it is.
100 centers around the country. I'd never seen anything this nice. So this is ridiculous. I don't believe you, but I've been in that counseling room with all the, I mean, it looks like an aquarium. You can't be depressed. All of a sudden your life's going to be better just walking in there.
So I walked in and was slightly scared. I walked into the coming out group and I was the only girl in the group and got a little bit even more scared. But I was met by Forrest Sheeran, who is the coming out group facilitator, and he was for 15 years.
When anybody new comes into the group, I tell them as a way of introduction that this is not a therapy group, it's a support group, and we provide a safe and confidential place for gay men, lesbians, bisexuals, and questioning individuals to meet on a regular basis and to discuss any issues that might be of importance to them.
To have that network of people that, and hear their stories, I mean, you can read in books all you want about coming out stories, you can hear it from friends, but until you're like in a safe environment with a lot of support, to hear the stories and kind of see how other people's family reacted and what they went through.
The purpose of the group is really to assist anyone in those groups that we mentioned earlier who might be dealing with some of these issues, and to help them, you know, start their own journey, such as it may be. And it isn't something that, you know, you come to forever.
It was after I'd been in the coming out group for about 6 months, and I went home to see my parents for Christmas, and just about 10 minutes before Christmas dinner, with all the family, I went into my mom's room where she was getting ready to come down for dinner, and I said, "Oh, by the way, Mom, I'm dating someone." She goes, "Oh, what's his name? What's his name?" I said, "Well, her name is Teresa." Let's just say my mom just kind of lost it right there, and we're about to go down to dinner in front of the whole family, and I basically just bolted. I just drove away and left my mom to deal with it. I had 27 years to deal with it, and my mom kind of had 10 minutes. So I had to give her time to come out too.
Jamie's the youngest of his family, and I think that like many young gay men, young gay women, we wanted to be authentic and genuine, but at the time we still had a concern that we would shame our families. It's taken time, but now we have the family support infrastructure that probably had always been there, but we were taught and socialized to believe that they wouldn't be there. And that kind of love and infrastructure is what we were replicating when we were reaching out and trying to find good, fun reasons to hang out with people outside of the influence of alcohol and outside of just the Friday or Saturday night at the club. We found ways to go on canoe trips with people and to organize, you know, social hours and you know, cookouts and just things that you would do with your family so that you had that kind of support and love and motivation to make something of yourself.
She came down and visited with me. She came down to South Florida and came to see me and hugged me and kissed me and told me she loved me no matter what. And we talked to my dad, and they've been nothing but amazing ever since. It changed my whole life. I mean, I've always been a A student, an overachiever, that kind of thing, but really once I came out, I feel like I could realize my full potential. I really didn't, I had done well, but I didn't feel good about myself. My relationship with my family wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. I didn't feel like I was genuine with my friends. It was more a distance relationship because I could never really be myself. And so once I came out, everything changed. I became a better business person. I became a better friend. I became a better daughter. It was like I freed myself up to actually be who I was.
But she works with the other professionals, our attorneys that volunteer, and our CPAs that are on the board, and our financial institutions. She works at every level with our volunteers. And I think that she'd be the first to tell you that that, for her, was a gateway for her own professional growth and experience. And it's neat to see because she's not only a good friend, but she's also a great board member and an incredible contributor to Compass. She's pretty much the example of what can happen if you come in and you come out.
I went to Gay Pride last year in March, and I got tested for HIV. You can do it for free, and they'll just sit there and give you the test results.
Well, Compass started as a Stop AIDS project of South Florida, and it was a federal-funded initiative. That was the core community organizing value, was to get people that you love and care about to have information about HIV. That was our core value.
And but the biggest thing that I think Compass does is that there's such an enormous support network underneath it that people feel confident in getting tested to find out if they are negative so they can stay negative. If they find out they're positive, they know that they're going to get the help, the support, the treatment so they can live long and healthy lives. And they're going to know that that agency is there to help diminish, as Tony said, the stigma and the stereotypes that come along with having that.
I mean, the fact is that, you know, when you get tested and there's that prolonged period, because I had 3 tests in the thing, and they came back and they said, well, we'll have to do a blood test. And they told me it was going to take 2 to 3 weeks to get the test results back. To be honest, it scared the hell out of me, because the fact is I wanted instantaneous results. I wanted to know whether or not there was something wrong with how they tested me or whatever. And because it's just that fear of, oh my God, do I actually have this? It was basically just hell. And then I got a letter from the health department before I actually got contacted through Compass, and I basically knew that I was HIV positive. So many people out there were HIV positive and were unfortunately dying from it. And now it's basically a reality that at any point, regardless of what happens, I could be on that quilt.
It's just that we realized along the way that there was something deeper than just, you know, a virus that was spreading through a population. And so you have to get a little bit closer to the answer than just this is how you protect yourself, or talking about abstinence, or knowing your partner's serostatus. You've got to get to, do you have pride in your health? Do you believe in your future?
In the very beginning, when I found out I was HIV positive, they did sit there and offer support groups for me. In the very beginning, they said, you know, we have plenty of different groups. If you need it, let us know. In the beginning, I did say no, because at that point, I wanted to work through a lot of the problems on my own and see where it would take me. But then I realized I actually needed to talk to someone or more people. Once I got enrolled in the program, they helped me find a doctor, you know, they helped me just basically do everything I needed. So, and it's helped me, I can't even count how immensely it's helped me. My caseworker, whenever I had a question or whenever I had a problem, she had no problem just calling me back and helping me through it. I mean, there would be sometimes I would call her 3 to 4 times a day, and she would put up with me. I mean, she was very nice about that. I would sit there and ask her about, you know, what the doctors are saying, or, you know, anything of regards, and she would have no problem dropping whatever she was doing and actually helping me find a therapist, finding a doctor, getting my medication filled for me. If I had any problems or any questions about my medical insurance or just any programs Compass could help me with, she was always there for me, and if she didn't know, she would have no problem asking someone else. So, I mean, they've helped me a lot.
We are not the DMV of HIV. You don't come here just to get your meds and leave. A lot of people come here because they're volunteering. During some period of that time, they go see their case manager, or they might hook up with the mental health, you know, counselor that they would like to be seeing that week. And they recognize that there's a bigger part. It's not just getting the service, it's also being part of the services that are being provided. And that's where the real return on investment is for many people.
It's all the wonderful people who have worked on this Compass facility. I got the grand tour today, and I am so impressed. As someone who has been active on the AIDS issues since very, very early, I mean, I started following AIDS in 79, 80, before it even had a name. And to see this kind of facility with this kind of openness and love, offers of testing, of treatment, of open arms for anybody to come in, of welcoming, to see this kind of facility now is exactly the kind of thing I dreamed of in the early 80s.
If I would have just gotten tested randomly for HIV and not had Compass to help me through anything, I would have had no idea what to do. I would have been completely lost. I realized that I have a lot of things that I haven't done yet that I want to do. It hasn't changed my outlook, it's just kind of made me realize that there are so many things that I want to do that I'm actually going to put into motion once I actually move. I'm going to go back to school, I'm going to get a degree, I want to become more stable, you know, in all aspects, financially, emotionally, and just go from there.
I still identify as a Christian. I'm trying not to cry right now. I went to Sunday school from a very early age, and I went to Catholic church every Sunday, and I received my first communion, and I wasn't confirmed because I was LGBT and it was an issue. And I was also attending a youth group at church, and when I transitioned and I came out as a transsexual woman, I was kindly asked to leave the choir, even though I was one of their best tenors, and also to leave the youth group. But I think the priest's words were, but we still want you to come to Mass so we can cure you, essentially is what he said. Dear God, I mean, these are people who I looked up to as a Christian and as like a person in that community, and here they were telling me that Jesus didn't love me because I was different. It made me feel like basically unwanted.
Linking an otherwise sometimes isolated population where they may feel they have nowhere safe to go. We provide them with the space, with a variety of different services, to be safe and to be themselves. Anyone in the community, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity, which is actually part of the reason why I wore a tie today.
We have partnerships with organizations that I wouldn't have ever dreamed possible. We have churches that raise money for us here, and like we're St. Andrews. We've got several different churches that we work with to do outreach for HIV.
The first time I walked in to Hope Youth Group when I was 14 years old, I felt kind of scared, and at first I was like, oh my God, I'm in the gay place. It's like, what do I do? I'm in the gay place. It's like, it's basically just like a new, like broadening one's horizons and getting used to being among a different group of people. But after I saw all these kids like me who identified as gay, lesbian, bi, transsexual, whatever, just sitting around and talking and being themselves, I was like, I felt like I could finally breathe. Like I could just breathe and be myself.
We recognize that we've got this moment of time, really. And often I see this between probably 15 and 25, where we can get to youth, we can get to young adults, and we can remind them to reach their full potential. And sometimes what you need is a portal to be able to get there. And I look at Compass and I think of our bridge, where the volunteers sit. I think of the activities that we have out in the community as a portal for people who, if they want to get involved and they want to experience the same level of acceptance and pride in their community, that it goes beyond just, being isolated or marginalized. It means being part of the network, being able to open the newspaper and know that you're actually part of that community.
Compass gave me like a second family when I didn't really have friends anywhere else, and they were there for me when even though I always had the support of my family, people got used to it and they learned to sort of accept me for who I was. And by my senior year, I ran for prom queen and I came in second place, so beating out 2 genetic females.
I had witnessed a student spill his lunch, and I went up to him and said, well, you need to go and pick that up. And he stood over me and said, no. As a teacher, this was within 2 months of first starting there, that if I did not place myself in a position of authority and hold that space at a middle school, I was not going to have a teaching career at all once the word got out. I had to threaten him with detention or something more severe. And he finally turned to go and get a broom and a trash can to clean things up, and as he made his way back, I stood near enough that I could hear him talk to his peers, and he whispered it to them. I didn't know if I was supposed to back down from the faggot ballet teacher or not. And it felt as though what he said reverberated through me just as the N-word would and had, as I've had that experience as well. I was reliving all of that just with a different name. It was completely stunning and shocking.
And I think that we talk about tolerance and we talk about acceptance, but we don't talk about being respected. And at the end of the day, I think the best thing that we can do, not only at home, not only with our kids, not only with the people that we interact with across the country, is learn to find ways to be respected in our communities. And that particular piece is so human. It's so much more direct than, saying yes or no to a marriage amendment. It's so much more impactful to be at Thanksgiving dinner or at Christmas dinner and to have your friends and to be able to talk openly about who you went on vacation with and what it is that your friends are doing and how that they helped to move their community forward, or to even be able to boast about how much respect somebody in your community or in your sphere of friends has actually encouraged in a process that we actually thought we were pretty much locked out of.
If I were to back down or be forced to back down from that space and from that action, then I would have been modeling behavior that would not have been something I would have wanted students to have seen, especially if they themselves were questioning any part of their own identity. If they weren't safe, they weren't going to be learning. I realized that I really wanted to be teaching, and this was an extension. Even though it wasn't the subject matter I wanted to teach, I was still teaching, and probably a larger classroom than I would have been if I just stayed in the studio. So one of the organizations I went to first was Compass. And so Compass became this fabulous place where we could all meet and discuss what plan of action we should have in making this county a safe space for in the schoolyard. The more we were doing, the more visible we were, the more successful our programs were, the more people who came in and then came out realizing their full worth and value, then the more successful we were going to be.
Clarence has been involved with Compass in one way or another since pretty much the beginning, since I was first here. He was actually the chair of the board for several years, and he's not only a teacher and a dance instructor, but now he's a professor at Florida Atlantic University.
Do you know whatever happened to that kid from way back with the lunch tray?
I do not know what happened to the kid who, I don't even remember what he looked like. And I met this person years later, and he had no recollection of ever having said or done anything along that line. I mean, he claimed me as one of his, models and protege. It was just like, okay, that's absolutely astounding. So I'm sure he has no recollection of what he did or of how he spurred me on to do the work that I did.
I've always, how can I say it? I can't say I've always known. I just known as far back as I can remember, let's say 4 or 5 years old, having crushes on boys in my class, and I learned that it's something that I should keep to myself. And I kept it to myself. I mean, for nobody ever found out. Nobody knew. I did not say it to anyone. And it was very scary for me to think that someone could find out.
It used to be a time when youth would come in and they were dealing with their sexuality, and their first concern, their number one concern was, you're not going to tell my parents. Please don't tell my parents. And that would be never would be something that we would do, but we also never created an environment here where we allowed youth to believe that not being honest with their parents was the best thing to do. Because we know that once children are out of the house, it's harder to have the type of communication that it is when they're in the house. And that's not for every circumstance.
And not being around a lot of gay people growing up, I didn't really have another example of how gay people are able to live in life, you know, except knowing that it's not accepted in the society, you know, and they feel that it's wrong or whatever.
For a lot of these youth that are intentionally dividing themselves for their family, to be able to come in every day and to see people who are working, that are professionals, that are openly gay, to see the elected officials and the organization leaders and the notables in your community coming into the center, to see Barney Frank visit and take pictures with the youth or talk to the youth, like Elaine Noble did, where she sits down and has a conversation. It gives them the courage and the strength to turn back to their families and say, guess who I met? Guess why? This is you know, who I am.
At 11 years old, I was actually diagnosed with cancer, and because of that, I wasn't able to go to school or anything like that. And after my father passing away, I had to start moving forward in my life. And a big part of that was to start, how can I say, being the person that I am. So I came out to my mother. I had to sit her down and make her guess, because I was just so afraid of actually telling her. It wasn't a problem for her, but it was a problem for me. I mean, for the first couple months, I could not say I'm gay. I could not bring myself to admit it.
And we have now seen a complete reversal. Now we'll see parents come into the center first and say, I think my son or daughter might be gay. I'm not sure about whether or not I'm doing this the right way. I want her or him to know that I love her unconditionally. I want to, you know, where's the manual? How is it that I make sure that as a parent, I do this the right way? And that is beautiful. That is and those are some of the resources that we've been able to be privileged to be funded by the Children's Services Council to provide a mental health therapist or provide someone to lead a support group that can actually help parents get through, you know, that unique challenge.
My mom asked a friend of hers who was gay about it, and, you know, where's the best place for me to go? And the first thing out of his mouth was go to Compass. So I called Compass and I told them the reason that I'm calling them, and they put on the youth director at the time, and she just, you know, she was a very nice woman, and she just said, you know, come by whenever you have a chance. We meet Wednesdays and Saturdays from 4 to 6. Stop by whenever you feel like. So a couple of weeks went by, I still didn't go. I was still a little too nervous.
Interestingly enough, I have a very similar scenario. I had a youth reach out to me about 5 or 6 years ago, and he could only email. And for about a year, I was corresponding with him through email, trying to get him to come into the safe space, which is Compass. He would drive by the building, but wouldn't stop and come into the building. You know, so I let him do kind of his incremental sort of baby steps that he needed to do that felt comfortable for him, and the whole while he was building up his confidence to do it. And now we have him as a volunteer, as a group member, and he's less isolated when he comes here.
But finally, I made the decision to go. And when I went there, I just remember going to the community center by myself. I was nervous. I asked the man at the front desk, where's the youth group? And he just pointed to the room in the back. I went there, and there was just 3 kids sitting on the floor watching a movie. And I remember sitting in the back looking at them, not the movie, and thinking, oh my God, they're my age. They're laughing, you know, they're out. They're making gay jokes and stuff like that, and it's okay. You know, nobody's has any problem with it. Nobody's making fun of them or anything. So it's okay. I mean, it was the first time I was around anyone my age that was out. So Compass, from that point, I would go twice a week, 3 times a week. I would speak, everybody there was so friendly.
I have been so blessed with the kids that have come through this program. I've seen them grow up and develop into who they are from the time they were 15 or 16 years old. And they've been just as wonderful for me as much as they did the work. I think people like to say that it's because of my therapist, but the individuals always do their work.
There's no question in my mind, without Compass, I would not be the person that I am today. I would not have had the success in fighting my illnesses, in getting over. One thing about cancer is, if you're depressed, it's going to affect your treatment. If you're down, if you're stressed, it's going to affect your treatment. I met Compass after my radiation and things like that, but just being able to recuperate and things like that, Compass, without a doubt, has helped me and shown me how, has given me the opportunity to get through the things that I needed to so I can focus on getting better. If you allow it to, your life can be so good once you get through it. You're gonna have to get through it, and there's no magic in the world that'll make it completely painless, but it gets so good afterwards. So wonderful.
Is there a moment in this video to ask people to give a donation to Compass? Yeah. Absolutely.
Part of the reason that people give to Compass is because through the years, and I hope I say this modestly, there's been a healthy return on investment.
There's just so much there that they do for everybody, and they don't ask for anything in return except for, you know, donations, which they need to actually sit there and survive.
I give money to Compass, and they need it.
I can't think of anyone in this community that cannot benefit from Compass, and if you donate or if you contribute to Compass, you're going to be contributing to this community.
Just trying to identify my own reason why I continually volunteer for Compass is...
He doesn't have a choice.
Well, that's the point. I mean, I don't think that people see it as a contribution.
Right.
It's just, this is what you got to do
right.
if you want to have a certain community in Palm Beach County.
Yeah, American Express, get some points.